Hello everybody, I'm RJ Marquez with KSAT.com, and thanks for joining our Race for Sace webcast. And of course, joining me, as always, is Mr. David Sears right here. David, Spurs Nation can breathe a little bit easy now. Kawhi Leonard is back. He's playing better, and he never really appeared to leave, but he appears to be back at full strength. David, talk about Kawhi being back in this lineup.
Yeah. Well, it's good for the team to be back at full strength because they're going to need it on this stretch run, vying for that playoff position. Tim's back, Kawhi's back. Everybody looks to be pretty healthy except for Manu. Need to get Manu back. Yeah. And then they'll be ready for the last few weeks.
And I think Manu tweeted out recently that he thinks he's about 3 weeks away, which would kind of put him in target during that rough stretch of home games that the Spurs have coming up. But let's talk a little bit first about the Rodeo road trip. Spurs, of course, coming off a winning Rodeo road trip. Besides the fact that, you know, they stay second in the standings, what else do you kind of take away from them being on the road?
On the positive side, it was a winning Rodeo road trip, very successful, one of the more successful Rodeo road trips they've had. On the negative side, the thing that concerns me a little bit is the way they come out against the bad teams. Right. They're always, you know, they played Utah, they played Sacramento, they're down, you know, 6, 8, 10 points, and then all of a sudden they kick it into gear. They're coming up on part of their schedule that's going to be tough, and if they start getting down early like that, it's going to be a whole lot harder to catch up with some of these better teams. Yeah. So that's one of my concerns, is just the way they're starting games.
Yeah, and I think interesting stat that I found earlier this week, the Spurs are 2-5 against some of the other top teams in the league. You were kind of breaking down the schedule a little bit earlier. Kind of go into that a little bit and kind of talk about, you know, this gauntlet of games that the Spurs have.
It's gonna be very tough. As of right now, tonight they take on the Houston Rockets, so that's going to end the Rodeo road trip. But right now they have 24 games left in the regular season, right? If we did the math right. I'm not that great at math, but I think that's right.
That's about right, yeah.
Of the 24 games, 9 of those games are against 5 different teams. And here we go. They've got Golden State 3, Oklahoma City 3, Clippers 1, and Portland 1, and of course the Rockets tonight. So they have got a gauntlet to go through at the end of the season. They're going to either come out of that bruised and battered, or they're going to come out so primed and ready for the playoff. Let's hope it's the primed and ready part. So, but that's just, I mean, think about that. Golden State 3 times to end the season, Oklahoma, and 2 of those are in the last 4 games. Oklahoma City 3 times. I think the last game was against the Mavericks. I didn't even count the Mavericks in there. I was just counting these 5 teams that they got to play. I mean, this is a rough schedule. So, which goes back to, you know, they can't get off of these slow starts in these games, man. They got to come out sharp and ready to go.
And especially against, I mean, you've seen recently what Golden State has done to opponents. Steph Curry's kind of dropping 50 points on opponents. I mean, shooting from all over the court. So I think, like you said, it's imperative really for them to kind of get off to a good start. But also something you mentioned earlier, Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, both back, especially on the defensive end, should help.
And that's going to be a big difference, especially against Golden State. Remember, they played without Tim Duncan, and they had 40 points in the paint. Right. Well, I think Tim Duncan will change that, so they're going to be more of a jump shooting team than a driving team. So that'll help a lot.
And again, it's one of those things that we can't really overlook. I think that someone who's been playing very well as of late, since the All-Star break, Tony Parker. I mean, we talked about Kawhi, Tim, and Manu coming back, but Tony Parker now averaging 20 points a game, 5 assists per game, has really kind of sort of kept the ship afloat as, you know, the Spurs have kind of gone through this part of the season.
And that's what you need. Now you see they're starting to get to where they want to be when the playoff time comes. LaMarcus is playing like we all figured he would. I think he's finally found his spot where he needs to be. The team has figured out, you know, how to use him. He's figured out the team. And you got Tony leading the way, which is what you want. Now you got to get Manu back to lead that second team, and then I think you're ready for the playoffs. Obviously, depending on how they go through this end of the season run.
Well, moving on from that, David, earlier this week, Kawhi Leonard, going back to Kawhi, showed off some of the latest fashion for the Jordan brand, but naturally, he did not show very much emotion during this photo shoot. David, we all love Kawhi. The city of San Antonio loves Kawhi, but he's not the most talkative guy. He's very, you know, unassuming. David, in your years covering the Spurs, who's been the most colorful Spurs pitchman? Maybe, you know, commercial guy, actor?
You know, when you go back to when David Robinson, George Gervin was always really good. You go back to the early days of David Robinson when he first got to San Antonio, and Larry Brown was the head coach. Old Spur fans will remember these, and they had Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood.
Right, yes.
That series of commercials for Nike.
Awesome.
Those were pretty good commercials. Sean Elliott's always been a pretty good spokesman.
Right.
As far as just overall talkative and insightful and fun, I think Avery Johnson was always one of the best quote guys in the locker room.
Yeah.
And I still to this day have three. Well, the first one was "I will not be mishandled." Remember the playoffs against the Suns when Steve Nash was roughed him up a little bit? "I will not be mishandled" was probably one of the top ones. And then "Losing is like a bad bowl of gumbo." One of my all-time favorites.
I like it. That little Louisiana flavor.
So I always loved that. I don't know why I still remember that quote, but "Losing like a bad bowl of gumbo." Like,
what about Rodman? Colorful?
Rodman,
Definitely,
yeah. We don't have enough time for the Dennis Rodman stories.
That's a whole different story.
Man,
with
the
Dennis
pink
Rodman.
truck and the pink boat. And oh, God.
It's interesting, you think about the Spurs being this franchise that is sort of quiet and, very by the book, but they've had some colorful figures, yeah.
You know what about Dennis Rodman, though? Love him, hate him, he never turned down a kid for an autograph. I never saw him walk away from somebody who wanted an autograph, especially a young person.
Nice.
Always signed the kid's autograph.
All right.
But other than that...
So we'll leave it at that. Good point on Dennis Rodman there. Okay, well, that's a wrap for this week's Race for Safes webcast. Check out the latest Spurs coverage on air and online at ksat.com. For David Sears, I'm RJ Marcus. Have a great day, everybody.
Go Spurs, go.